Afternoon all, thanks for joining. We're just giving a minute for all to join, so bear with us. Okay, looks like we have some good numbers, so I'll kick off and as a few more late arrivals join. But firstly, welcome all. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedules to attend the Gemina webinar for the installer emergency backstop session. So in this session, in this session we'll be focusing very broadly on the emergency backstop, providing some detailed step-by-step instructions on the emergency backstop mechanism, how it will work come to go live from the 1st of October. And then we've got a few videos to take you through, which will be some further support material that you'll be able to use post go live. So if we can jump to the next slide, please. But before we commence, I'd like to firstly acknowledge the traditional owners of the land in which we operate and recognise their continuing connection to the land, water and culture. And I'd like to pay my respects to the elders past, present and emerging. Thank you. So first and foremost, a quick introduction for those I haven't had the pleasure to work with. My name is Chris Mason. I'm the Customer Development Manager for Gemina. So I look after all negotiated connections on the Gemina network, which include any connections that require network augmentation and embedded generation. And embedded generation also covers solar installations more specifically. So for this session, it's being run as a webinar, hence all microphones are off. So we ask that any questions that do arise throughout the presentation, please put them in the chat. I have a team that's supporting me in this webinar who will be capturing all of those questions. And during the Q&A section towards the end of this session, we'll be running through each of those questions or as many as we can based on the time we have. And for any questions that we don't get to, we will prepare a bit of a summary with some responses along with sharing the recording for this session. Okay, and obviously the session will be recorded. So the emergency backstop mechanism. Now, I'm sure a lot that have joined today have heard of the emergency backstop or have some baseline understanding of what it is. But in essence, apart from it being a government mandate that has been implemented for Victoria, this is a key piece of technology that Gemina is heavily supporting to support a renewable future. So if we go to the next slide, please, Tanaz. What we'll take you through is just a bit of an intro video that we've created, again, available on our website, that will give you some further context.
More than ever before, energy is being delivered through a more sophisticated and complex landscape. We've seen a rapid uptake in various forms of renewable energy, particularly solar, as Victorians look to reduce their reliance on fossil fuels and transition to low-carbon solutions. If you're curious about solar or other forms of renewable energy, begin by understanding your electricity usage patterns and start researching. Next, select an accredited installer who can guide you further. Your installer will work with the inverter manufacturer and Gemina to install your new system. Once testing is complete and the system has been set up on Gemina's network, you're almost there. The final step is contacting your chosen retailer. Your retailer will ensure your system can export any excess solar you generate back into the electricity grid. You're now good to go. While the increased take-up of solar is encouraging, it also poses some challenges in managing the supply and demand balance within our electricity network. At certain times, such as on a sunny day in spring and summer, we may have too much electricity being generated. This can lead to grid instability and the possibility of blackouts. To manage this imbalance, the Victorian Government is introducing some changes, called the Emergency Backstop Mechanism. Under the Emergency Backstop Mechanism, the Australian Energy Market Operator, or AEMO for short, can request electricity network distributors to remotely reduce or switch off solar being generated during an emergency situation. To support these requirements, customers upgrading, replacing or installing a new solar system from the 1st of October 2024 must 1. Only install an inverter on the Clean Energy Council's list of compliant CCIP Oz inverters. And 2. Ensure that your inverter remains connected to the internet at all times. These changes will ensure customers can continue to enjoy renewable energy solutions safely, securely and affordably into the future. If you'd like to learn more about solar or learn more about the emergency backstop, please visit gemina.com.au.
Perfect. That's a great little intro into the emergency backstop, and I think it's a great video to use as a support piece of material for your customers. So that video is also available on the Gemina website. So if you need to refer any of your customers to that video, please feel free to do so. So in summary, as you heard, the emergency backstop is a response to some challenges that the various networks are seeing. So the rapid uptake of renewable energy, including solar, more energy being pushed into the grid, current or very limited options in managing this additional energy, and then also the current network not being built to support that future demand. So what the emergency backstop will introduce is opportunities to further improve the stability of our network, future-proof solar technology as well to enable more solar to be installed. But then it'll also be technology that will help support flexible export and tariffs. So we will like to, in the future, use this technology to then introduce further opportunities for customers who currently may not have an export limit or capability to access flexible export and tariffs. And then finally, this technology will then go that step further in supporting distributed energy resources. So things like dynamic import as well as export, where the network can help manage the electric vehicle charging to support that balance on the network. Next. So in terms of emergency backstop specifically, we are actually at stage 2 of the rollout. So stage 1 actually commenced from the 25th of October 2023 last year, and that was for solar systems above 200 kVA. So Gemina has and the team have worked with customers to already implement those backstop requirements or backstop mechanisms for those larger systems. And what we're working towards is for the 1st of October 2024, rolling it out to basically everything else. So anything from less than 1 kVA right up to that 200 kVA range. Well, so how this will implement or how this requirement will come into play for Gemina. Any approved MyGeneration or battery storage or pre-approval applications that are submitted prior to the 1st of October will be exempt essentially. And then anything after the 1st of October will need to be backstop enabled. So for installations from the 1st of October, what you'll need to consider as installers for systems that will be going or connecting to the network from that date. Everything must meet the backstop requirements. All inverters must be CCIP Oz enabled. And the easiest way to determine this is by accessing the Clean Energy Council, or CEC for short, list of approved inverters. This is also supported, and you'll see a little bit more on this on our website, on our portal, so to make it a little bit easier. But in your pre-research or pre-installation queries, definitely refer to that list. The inverter must have reliable internet in order to access the full export capabilities. And we strongly recommend an Ethernet connection to minimize the impacts of intermittent Wi-Fi connections or password changes, that sort of thing. But then, as we said, the whole system must be backstop enabled, and there's some new steps that we've implemented in our end-to-end process to support this. So these are demonstrating the outcomes from after the 1st of October when connecting systems. So firstly, if an inverter that is applied or a pre-approval application is received after the 1st of October and the inverter is not CCPOS enabled, then it can't even be connected to the network. So that's a hard, flat rule. Now, if the inverter is on that CEC list and is CCPOS enabled, however, the manufacturer hasn't been through Gemina's process to onboard or whitelist their devices. Irrespective of whether there's an internet connection or not, the inverter can be connected to our network. However, it will be on a low static export limit, and that's 0.5 kVA. And that's not per phase, that's for the whole site. Same goes if it is a CSC approved inverter. However, again, it hasn't been a manufacturer hasn't been onboarded to Gemina systems and there's no internet, same outcome, low static export. Really what you would want is you want the inverter to be on the CEC list, the inverter to also be on a Gemina approved list, which is available on our website already today, and a reliable internet in order for your customer to access the full export, which is 5 kVA per phase or 15 kVA over 3 phases. So now we'll touch base on the Gemina connection process.
What do installers need to do? From the 1st of October 2024, only install CCIP Oz compliant inverters that are on the Clean Energy Council list. Ensure that the premises has a stable internet connection and the customer knows how to maintain this. Follow the steps in the Gemina connection process as there are new requirements installers must follow, including additional information that must be supplied to Gemina. Finally, there are steps that Gemina must undertake to test and commission the inverter before the maximum export limit can be applied. Customers have a responsibility to keep their inverter connected to the internet. As an installer, you should demonstrate how they can check this connection is active, as well as how to reconnect the connection if it's lost. For more information on the emergency backstop, visit gemina.com.au/electricity/rooftop solar and other technologies.
Yeah, thanks. So in terms of the process, what is actually changing? So that video gives you a quick snapshot around, some of the core changes that we're implementing into our end-to-end process, which is very similar to other Victoria DNSPs. But as we get into more detail, essentially there are 2 additional steps that are required in the end-to-end process. So pre-approval, which is an existing step, that's where you submit your approved MyGeneration or battery storage through the Gemina electricity distribution portal, and Gemina will assess. In a lot of cases for systems below 30 kVA or 10 kVA per phase, they will receive an instant pre-approval. Once it's approved, then you go through your installation process, which is step 3, ensuring that the right settings are applied. Most importantly, the low static export limit, Australia A settings, and then obtaining the LFDI, long form device identification. So that will be provided to you from the OEM app in most instances, or via email from the OEM or the manufacturer, sorry. Now, step 4, this is one of the new processes. This is basically where you now submit a commission my CCPOS inverter application through the electricity distribution portal. So this application will require you to submit the NMI, that LFDI, the certificate of electrical safety, but then also photos of the inverter settings or screenshots essentially from the OEM app, demonstrating that you've set that low static export limit and you've set the Australian A settings. Finally, once that application is submitted, we'll go through testing and commissioning. So this is where the Gemina team in the back end will then run the commissioning steps to register the device, make sure it's connected, and then run some operational commands to make sure that there is control over that inverter. Finally, you'll get a response back, basically confirming if all tests were successful. And then we have the final connection. So if all things have passed, then the export limit will be enabled at 5 kVA per phase or 15 kVA over 3 phases. However, if for whatever reason there were connectivity issues or those commissioning steps were not successful, then the sites can be connected on a low static export until that connection is resolved. Step 7 obviously is not always required, but for sites that have not had solar before, the meter does need to be reconfigured. So that's where you go through the retailer and submit an alteration application or a meter reconfiguration application to enable the meter to read the bidirectional flow. And then lastly, Gemina will maintain the ongoing monitoring and compliance of the CCPOS connection. So we'll ensure that it's tested, the connection's tested, and we'll notify customers if connections are lost. Now, the commissioning step can take between 7 to 10 business days at a worst case. And that's purely because the tests need to be conducted on a day that has sufficient generation for us to successfully test all the outcomes. So another artifact that we've included on our website is a solar installer checklist. So based on those steps, there are some key items that installers will need to check. So before the installation, during installation or while on site, throughout the commissioning step, and then after installation. So this is something that you could keep on yourselves, print if you like, and just make sure that you're checking through these items to increase the success of your installation. Now, to support this change, we've made some changes to the electricity distribution portal. The pre-approval application is primarily the same, and there is another video that will take you through in more detail that step-by-step process of both submitting a pre-approval application, but then also commissioning the MyCCPOS application. Welcome to the Gemina solar installation video. In this video, we will be teaching you how to submit your applications for a solar pre-approval and how to apply to commission your inverter. To start the process, you will first need to log in to the Gemina portal. This can be found on the Gemina homepage. If you have never logged in before, simply register and follow the process. Once you have logged in, you'll be landed with the home greeting page. On this page, you'll be able to see all applications that you have in train. Now for step 1, solar pre-approval application. Simply click the new application button and navigate down to the Approve My Generation or Battery Storage application. Next, you should enter the details of the application. This includes the NMI for the site in question. Once the site and customer details are correct, click Next, add any comments, and proceed to the installation details. Here, you should insert all the details of the solar system, including the total installed capacity of all inverters, installer details, number of phases with solar, is there any part of the installation that is not solar or battery? And finally, does the system have access to the internet? Next, you'll enter the details of the inverter and solar system more specifically. Please note that the Gemini portal does connect to the CEC list. All inverters listed on this page are on the CEC approved list. Once you have entered all the details of the inverter and solar system, you can proceed to the attachments page. Please attach all information necessary for us to assess your installation. Finally, check through your application, make sure all the details are correct, read the terms and conditions, and when ready, accept and proceed. If your system is less than 10 kVA per phase or 30 kVA in total, you will receive an offer straight away. If it's above this size, it will be referred to our team for further assessment. Note, for systems above 30 kVA, they are referred to as negotiated connections. Further fees will apply. Step 2, Inverter Commissioning Application. Click on the Commission My CCPOS Inverter application. You will first need to enter the NMI details of the site. Ensure that the right address is populated. Then you will need to enter in the LFDI. This can be obtained from the Inverter Installer OEM app. Finally, confirm if internet is available at the site. Next, you'll need to provide attachments. These attachments include the Certificate of Electrical Safety and screenshots of the inverter settings from the OEM app. We have included a few checkboxes to help installers remember their requirements. Finally, when you're ready, review the terms and conditions and the details of the application and submit. When you are at this screen, you'll know that your application is successfully submitted. It can take Gemini between 5 to 10 business days to provide you with a response. Great. So again, this video is another resource that will be available on the website, so it can be referred to if needed in future. But one thing the video didn't provide is what the outcomes will look like. So on screen here, you'll see two examples. In both examples, you'll see on the left when the connection is completed, it'll be closed with essentially a green indicator and a message. Now, this will also be sent to you by email as well, and that email will indicate the outcome of the message. If it isn't successful, you'll actually be provided with an attachment, which is a report of the commissioning steps. So that report will identify exactly what processes have failed. So it could be as simple as internet connectivity or various control commands that are super important for the CCPOS function are not working for whatever reason. So that report will be provided to you, and then you can then work with the OEM to then troubleshoot those problems. Next slide. Yep, so now we'll go into the minimum system load events. So this is basically an event where OEM has notified all of the DNSPs within Victoria that a minimum system load event has been triggered, and ultimately DNSPs will then be required to either curtail or switch off generation. Okay, so the process in which this will be undertaken is Gemini will simply be notified through the relevant authority. Gemini will then post either on the day or the next business day a notification that an MSL event has occurred on its website, and there will be a page with a history of all MSL events as well and the duration, so that it can be referred to post-event if needed. Now, The whole purpose of this is obviously to reduce the amount of generation, because the transmission network in most cases is very close to an event whereby protection will operate. So AEMO will do its best to notify and shed as much generation as possible to prevent this from happening. So in most cases, the first step is to curtail, which means the export limit will be set to 0, but that should enable self-consumption still. If enough of a response is not achieved, then we'll go to stage 2, which is to actually switch off the inverters completely. And then there are other steps involved if that is not sufficient. So what does it mean for customers? Well, essentially, if generation is reduced, customers can self-consume. That in most cases will allow customers to still charge their batteries and no expected interruption of their electricity supply. However, export will be stopped. If the system's turned off, then obviously self-consumption will also be turned off with that. So there'll be no generation as well as no feeding. But in terms of forecasting events, at the moment we're expecting anywhere between 4 to 6 events per annum. These will typically happen on days where there is a lot of sun, and also typically where a lot of residents have gone on holidays. So, for context, the last MSL event that was very close was New Year's Eve last year. So, based on the AEMO forecast, there may be 1 or 2 post-go live this year. However, the likelihood is still pretty low. But it will be monitored, and we'll make sure that those notifications are put on our website. All right. Now, in terms of keeping customers informed, there's quite a bit of process that we've implemented to ensure that customers remain informed. So next slide, Sines. Which include a lot of information that we've now updated and refreshed our website. But we've also included a lot of education pieces on pre-installation in particular. So the new requirements, the need for the system to be backstop enabled, links to the approved list, and links to the Gemini approved list, more importantly, so that installers can make active decisions on ensuring that the systems they're installing have the best possibility or possible outcome to access the full export. During the installation, we have a lot of information to keep you up to date with what's happening through our portal and our process, including both email and on-portal notifications. And then finally, after installations, we're doing a lot of work to support the retailers to ensure that they're aware of the impacts of the emergency backstop and customers, particularly with move-out, move-ins, but then also doing a lot of work to educate other key stakeholders within the industry, including working with your OEMs to provide additional support for you as well. And then finally, we have a very extensive FAQ to help support both installers and end users. So, diving into the support and additional information in a bit more detail. So the key reference or key pieces of material are available on the solar and other technologies page, which Gemini has now created. We've also got a dedicated page to emergency backstop, which has information specific to emergency backstop. And this is likely where the information will be stored for all the historical MSL events. But then also we have our list of approved inverters available for you. So if you're using our list of approved inverters, then you can automatically assume that it's on the CEC list as well. So, but it's never harmful to check that CEC list to be 100% sure. Now, the Victorian government, through DECA, the Department of Energy, Environment and Climate Action, has also put together a lot of information, and there are some free materials that you can access, including training modules for installers, which are provided through Solar Victoria as well. So if you haven't already, we highly recommend that you check out these materials as well. Last but not least, also on our website, we've created a solar commissioning team at Gemini. So there's an email address which can be emailed anytime, and we should we'll endeavour to respond within 24 to 48 hours. But then from 9 to 5, we have a Monday to Friday, we have a number that's available for support as well. So that's to troubleshoot the portal, troubleshoot any responses, etc. Okay, well, that is the end of the presentation for today. Now we'll jump into the Q&A section. So I might invite some of my colleagues to come on screen, who has been fielding through this session some of the questions. And then, so Tony, if you can join us, Tan, if you're on the line, come on screen. So these are all Gemini team members that have been working quite heavily over the last 12 plus months on the emergency backstop. So we should be able to answer any questions that you have.
Right, I can start reading out a few of them. Chris, I think
Go ahead.
Tan's having a few technical problems. We'll try and sort him out in the meantime. But there's quite a few. David, I noticed that you've put quite a long, lengthy question, so we'll try and get to those a little bit later. If not, we'll definitely come back via email with a little bit more detailed response. But start off with Pravinder, who said the CSIP loss internet is a fail-safe. Do the inverters go offline when they lose internet?
Well, the inverters don't go offline, but they will divert down to a low static export. So the second internet is lost or within a certain response time, the export limit will be limited to the low static until internet's established again, at which point the utility server will provide a new command to increase that export limit back to the 5 kilowatts or 5 kVA per phase.
Okay, and Dean's asked, are there expiring on pre-approvals with Gemini? Other DNSPs give a SPA with typically 3-month expiry.
Yes, and that's the same for Gemini. So our pre-approvals do also have that 3-month expiry, and that's detailed in the MSO the model standing offer that's attached to the pre-approval.
Okay, so we've got. So Rana is asked, despite the backstop, we still have a 5 kVA or 15 kVA default export limit, and are all existing systems, will they also emergency backstop limited to 0.5 kVA? So
existing systems are not impacted by emergency backstop unless they're upgraded or replaced. Now, the existing systems, yes, will have a 5 or 15 kVA default export limit, and that will stay static unless there's any changes to the inverter, at which point it will be emergency backstop enabled. It will need to be emergency backstop enabled with that default 0.5.
Great. We've got Hatal who's asked, when you say offer for pre-approval, will we get a document with the approved export limit?
Yes, definitely. So in both cases, whether it's below 30 kVA or what we call a basic connection that's offered through the model standing offer, or a negotiated connection where you'll have a much larger contract with terms and conditions, both of them will detail exactly what the export limits are that are approved.
Great. Ches has asked, there's a couple of people who also supported this question. Do we still need to submit an EWR with the COEs and OST-A settings?
Not to Gemini. The EWR is more for the retailer and the metering reconfiguration request. So it will still be required for the retailer application. However, for the commissioning my CCPOS application, it's just the COES and Australia A settings screenshots.
Okay. If the weather is good and everything's working okay, how long do you think the commissioning is likely to take? Other DNSPs are stating 30 minutes typically.
Yeah. So in the future, we will be able to achieve similar numbers, but right now we don't have on-site commissioning capabilities. So all of our commissioning is actually managed manually by a back-end team from Go Live. ideally, we are looking to implement some further capabilities, hopefully in the early in the new year, but it could be as late as mid-new year that those capabilities become active. However, yeah, from go live, it will still be a minimum of 2 to 5 business days, depending on weather. But a typical or maximum 5 to 10.
Just I had a question about providing a link to where in the MSL events will be listed, so we can provide that link. That's on our web page, and so we can at the end of this we'll provide that link. So it's obviously not up there at the moment because we haven't had any events, but that will be there.
Yep.
Well, Jen provided an annual report showing the number of events and curtailment switching off has occurred. This will help factor in AMO curtailment for systems with performance guarantees.
Yeah, so on our website, as I said earlier, we will actually maintain a list of all the MSL events, dates, start time, end time. So we'll keep a historical log. Depending on how busy it gets, you know, that log may be refreshed on a 12-monthly basis. We'll have a look and see, but the intention is to have that historical log on our website accessible to anyone who needs it.
And so Wayne's asked, with a solar battery solution with backup supply, what happens if you turn off the inverter? Will this actually revert to an off-grid mode or actually shut down completely?
It's a good question, Wayne. My understanding is that it will shut down completely. It won't go into an off-grid mode. I could be mistaken, and Tan is our more technical person who might be able to answer that, but I think he's having some trouble. So for now, assume that it will be an actual shutdown, but we will confirm that in our response when we share in future.
Yeah, Chris, I'm back online now.
Oh, you're back. Thanks, Dave.
Yeah. So I guess for the backstop, that's it will be turning off. It really depends on the size of the battery. If it's a big battery where it does have a greater impact or worsen the MSL event, then that's probably something that we will discuss further through each of the connection application.
Yeah, correct. So that's where we go into the more negotiated space, where the team will do a lot more assessment, a lot more secondary assessment and protection assessment of the installation, and there'll probably be a lot more detailed instruction on how that will operate. But for the basic connections below 30 kVA, yeah, I'd say we'll just switch off or shut down.
David's had a question earlier. I think Tan's online. He might be able to answer this one. So many of the solar PV systems installed for their particular customers are under 200 kVA, but they're on premises with consistently high loads, with base loads often higher than the maximum solar generation. So like supermarkets, processing facilities, and so on. So it's not possible to guarantee 0.5 kilowatts of export during the commissioning period. Sometimes obviously they don't want to do a load shed for that testing. So how does Gemini get around that, or is there any procedures of how that sort of situation is handled?
Yeah, so I think our initial thinking is that we will ultimately use the meter data in the first instance. So we will use our LV analytics essentially. So the idea is when the generation is on, you'll be consuming a certain amount or importing a certain amount. When the generation's off, that amount should increase. So we should see that during our commissioning process and use that to validate. Anything you want to add to that, Tan?
Yeah. So if I just probably cover that question in two parts, is the during the commissioning, certainly we'll be testing that X-watt limit. If there's a loss of interoperability or the internet, And if that's remain below 0.5 for the site export, then that part is satisfactory. Then there's the other part which we'll be testing is the run back or curtailing the generator itself, in which we'll get a feedback loop for the what the inverter is generating at that point in time, and that's really the two key metrics that we'll be using to test during the commissioning. So I think that answered that question. And in the event where the ongoing maintenance, I guess we do similar test.
Okay. Got a few more questions coming through. See. Okay, so we've got one. This was Julian. They do a lot of new home builds, so their sites don't have consistent internet connections after the installer leaves until the homeowner moves in. How do they do that commissioning testing?
Yeah. So with that one, Julian, you can still submit the application, but obviously the application will fail because you by that stage you would have left the site. You probably would have set it up using a hotspot. So the idea is, when the customer moves in, and we've done a bit of work with developers to provide them with a bit of a guide, or the new homeowners a guide to ensure that they set up the internet and touch base with the installer. So it's very likely that irrespective of submitting that commissioning application, it will fail. Then you'll have to do it again once the internet's established and the customer touches base. So yeah, that's ultimately the only solution at this stage.
Okay. Bruce has asked, for sites with multiple inverters, how will Gemma control the export limit on all the inverters? Do we need to have a master-slave configuration? What if the inverters from different brands, and could we not be master-slave configured, or will they be controlled separately?
Yep, I can take that question, Tony. So the expectation is either one of the inverter will be act as the master, if you like, which then coordinate or through the software communication client, which then coordinate with all the inverters on site. Alternatively, you have to put in some sort of a gateway device to coordinate all of the inverters within the site. So our backend system will only be communicating to one device that's on site. So just and the testing will be done at that interface point.
Okay, so hopefully a quick one. When will in-band registration be ready?
I can handle that one. So in-band registration, I think we're looking at 1 to 2 months from go live, or as quickly as possible, really. We couldn't quite meet the deadlines, but our teams are working vigorously in the back end to make that happen.
We've got another question. How long is the time period between the install and submitting the commissioning info for manual test?
Oh, well, it could be done on the same day. The application gives you flexibility where you could either do it while you're on site or, once you're back at the office, or you could give it to an administrative support person to submit that for you as well. It doesn't really matter when it comes in, because it is going to take us a few days to complete that commissioning test. But it's up to you, essentially.
So since some new builds won't have an NMI, in this case, how will pre-approval take place? Yeah,
well, pre-approval can't take place without an NMI, so there's some steps that need to occur. Typically, the supply is usually established for the build anyway, so I would hope that there's an NMI in most cases. However, it definitely needs an NMI before you can go through pre-approval and install.
We've got another question from Dean. what about I guess solar inverter and an AC coupled battery and Powerwall export 500 kilowatts each program too? How can we have a master slave setup of solar inverter and AC coupled battery?
Yeah, I'll let you take that one, Ted.
Yeah, that's probably the one that we probably need to work with you a bit closer on that. I think a very similar response to the other questions raised around the battery. So would be when we send. So if I take a step back, that when we send the curtailment or the run back of the generation, okay, we'll be running on the controls that's related to generation only. Okay, we're not limiting the load. So with the coupling with the battery, if the inverter technology, the software communication client needs to be able to handle the what I call controls that's related to the load side. That will need to be so if the battery and the solar is generating, then that will need to run back in order to meet the emergency backstop requirement. Okay, so the inverter itself will need to configure in such a way that that if it is charging during that time, then that can continue to be charged. But if it's generating, then that will need to come off, because we do have a surplus generation at that point in time when EMO calls an emergency event, which we have to respond.
Thanks, Ted. Okay. Hopefully that answers the question.
All right, so got a couple more questions here. Will the VPP programs also restrict or curtail in an event?
That's a good question. So a lot of the times, anything that's sizable enough to be part of a VPP will be a negotiated connection. So there'll be a much more intricate backstop mechanism built in. Tan, maybe I know you were keen to jump in on that one, so go for it.
Yeah. So the expectation, whether the inverter or generators called in general, whether it's operated under the VPP, we under the emergency backstop curtailment event or minimum system load event, we expect the generator to come off. Whether it's if it's directly controlled by the VPP, then that will need to be coordinated with the priority of that control. So if we send the curtailment directly to the inverter, then we expect that control, the localized control system, if you like, to take that signal as being the priority over the programs scheduled under the VPP, which may be for other market services purposes, but the emergency backstop will certainly take priority over other requirements.
Okay. Now, we might have answered this one earlier, but just to get some clarity, there's been a few of these questions. So will no customer be able to export more than 5 kVA per phase, no matter how big the system may be?
Oh, I can answer that. So for negotiated connections, in a lot of cases, it's subject to the area. So if the area is export constraint, then a lot of the times those export limits will be zero. where they're not constrained, and there are areas in our network that are still capable of handling export, you will get an export limit larger in most cases than that 5 kVA. 5 kVA is just a blanket rule for what we call our basic connections, so that 30 kVA or below. That answers the question.
We've got another one where there's a diagram dropped in chat. It's just trying to, I think Rana has asked a question on how to show in a line diagram the system. So let me see if I can just share that just briefly.
Yep. Or maybe Tony or Rana, if you don't mind, we might take that one offline. If you refer to the Gemini guidelines, and more importantly, the emergency backstop guidelines, there are some documents on our Gemini page that does have some examples of a single line diagram that you could potentially use to demonstrate how that should be demonstrated on your single line diagrams. But if there's any further information required on that, Rana, yeah, we're happy for you to reach out to myself or the team.
All right, thanks, Chris. Wayne's got another question. So an AC coupled batteries on a VPP will also need to be backstop protected. Is a Tesla Wall 2 current approved for this function?
Yep. I don't think we've gone through the validation test for the Tesla Powerwall yet. If it's specifically the AC coupled battery, so we're happy to do the test, but we I guess the battery itself, we still it's still under consideration of how we're gonna call upon the emergency backstop, if you like. So that is still we'll take that on notice, but that is still a work in progress, if you like, for batteries.
So another question, can we take a secondary protection off our greater than 30 kVA Gemini designs from October 1st, as they're no longer required on the standards?
Yep. Yeah, we understand the question. With the recent AS 4777, the revision of the AS 4777.1, I think. So we are considering whether that's still required or not. So that's our connection team is handling that. Understand there have been questions relating to that, whether that's still needed. And that is in discussion at the moment. So we hope to have some direction on that question in the next few weeks.
Tim's asked, are there any extra steps required for multiple inverter sites?
For I would imagine the multiple inverter size is typically greater than 30 kVA. So that in itself will be under the negotiated connection process, which would typically require additional steps compared to the basic connection. So essentially, as per earlier comments that I made, that with the multiple inverters, then it depends on the SEC or software communication client. The expectation is we would only need to communicate to one device, which would then coordinate it with the multiple inverters. So it is short answer. That was a long answer. So short answer is there is likely to be extra step within the site.
Okay, got a couple of minutes left. A few more questions. If we're adding a new system to a site with an existing inverter, does the existing inverter also need to be compliant with emergency backstop?
So I think I can answer that one, Tan. The short answer is if the existing inverter can be uninterrupted and the new system can be installed without requiring change or integration, then the old system can be grandfathered.
Right. I've got another question just come in. Does the new emergency backstop methodology supersede the DMP3 SCADA requirement for systems above 200 kVA?
At the moment, no. So in terms of the technology that we will use for systems above 200, it will still be DOE over SCADA.
Okay. There was a longer question that David posed earlier, so we will probably, I think, take that one offline and answer that one it's a bit more detailed, so we'll go back to that. So that's probably the main questions that are in the chat at the moment. So there's been some lively discussions in there. So I'll hand it back over to you, Chris. Yep.
Thanks, Tony. A great set of questions. I really appreciate your inputs. As mentioned, a lot of this information will be made available to you. There is also our emergency backstop email address. If you have any feedback or any further questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to the team and I. But again, thank you for taking the time this afternoon. Really do appreciate your inputs and your participation in the session. I hope it's been valuable to you. And as mentioned, if there's anything we can do to support, please let us know. We look forward to working with you in the future. Thanks all.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.